Hello everyone! So I'm finally doing the Q&A. I know I did the announcement like 2 weeks ago and I wanted to record this video before I went on a holiday, but I didn't have time, so here it is. That's why there's a new setting. Hopefully I framed everything properly. I don't know, I'll see when I'm editing this video, but I hope you enjoy it. And I'm gonna get down to answering your questions. I'm gonna use my phone here and let's just get going. So the first person who asked me a question was on Twitter, I believe, was Dakota from Dakota Abroad. And he asked in French, so c'est quoi ta relation avec CodeSwitching? Pour moi, c'est très important et un skill très utile. Je fais tout le temps, mais pour les autres, c'est comme the worst thing in the world. Oh no, you're ruining the language. So he's basically asking me what I think about code switching. So in case you don't know what code switching is, because I don't know how common this word is, but code switching is when you mix up your languages. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but essentially if I was speaking French and then I inserted a word in English, for example, then that would be code switching. Basically, I think that because people traditionally saw bilingualism based on monolingual standards, they tended to see code switching as a bad thing, as an impure way of talking the language. But actually, there's no scientific evidence for it. So I don't know, I don't think code switching is bad, and nor does the entire linguistics community, because there's no reason for you to negatively see code switching. It's part of the normal communicative experience of lots of bilinguals in the world. In fact, I would say all of them. And that's just how it is. But I think one of the worries people have about code switching is that they think it's going to be out of control. So you'll have beginners, for example, that are learning French and they are native speakers of English, for example, and they'll mix up the two languages, but that's absolutely normal. Especially in the earlier stages, you will often just code switch or mix up the languages. But as you get proficient, code switching tends to be sort of less common. I mean, in monolingual context, so when you're speaking only one language to a person that only understands that language, as opposed to when you're with bilinguals where you know the other person understands the two languages, so you'll feel more free to code switch. I kind of did a video about it regarding bilingualism according to Grosjean, which I will try to link if I don't forget, but he explains a little bit how, you know, depending on whether you're on a monolingual mode or bilingual mode, then on the bilingual mode you will tend to code switch more, while on the monolingual mode you will usually not switch, because that doesn't make sense for a bilingual to just code switch when they know the other person doesn't understand the language. I hope that answers the question, and I hope I was clear enough. But basically, linguists agree that it's fine and haters just need to sit down. And the next person to ask me a question is Luke from Full-Time Fluency. And I'm going to make it short because we had a bit of a discussion about his question, but essentially I think he's asking me that what is for me the advantage of knowing linguistics when you're doing language learning. And there's lots of examples I could give, but I try to give only 3. So the first one is phonology and phonetics. I kind of explained it in the video I did, was it a week ago or 2 weeks ago? I will link it, but essentially I explained that knowing phonetics and just having a good understanding of phonology really helps me to pronounce a language better, because I'm more open to the fact that from one language to the other the sounds are different. Everyone knows that, but I mean, it's just made me aware that, you know, depending on where you pronounce the sound or where you form the sound, then a specific sound will come out, and that's just helped me a lot. And other things such as, you know, in English you wouldn't say law and order, you would link them. You would say something like law and order. Apologize for my accent, but you get the idea. And other little details like that which really help you to make you sound more natural, because you're aware that there's a difference between how a word is pronounced on its own as opposed to how it's pronounced within a sentence, and sometimes that can, you know, it's not the same pronunciation when the word is in context. I hope that makes sense what I'm trying to say, but I explained this in a little more detail in that video, which I will put in the description box below. Another example of how I think linguistics has helped me with language learning is the difference between prescriptivist and descriptivist. And I'm going to explain briefly for those that might not know what that is, but this prescriptivism essentially is people that will sort of think that, you know, grammar, the way it's taught in books or in school or whatever, is the proper way to speak, while descriptivists will actually focus on how people speak because they know that the way people speak in real life, in casual context, differs from standard grammar. And it's helped me because it made me realize that, you know, there is grammar and I love grammar, but it's not always appropriate to follow it in sort of casual context, because in some cases, if you sort of follow the grammar to the letter, by the letter, then you will maybe sound weird or even pretentious. So in English, for example, if you use whom consistently in sort of casual context, then that sounds a bit strange, right? And same things will happen in other languages. So in a way, it's helped me to not sort of stick too much to the grammar, and actually sort of pay attention to how people actually speak, which can and will sometimes differ from how, you know, what grammar books say. And the last example I'm going to give is bilingualism, and basically it's about not freaking out when I mix up languages, because all bilinguals will mix up the languages, native or non-native. So it's nothing to worry about. You know, I always see on YouTube, Twitter or Facebook, people saying, oh, I mix up languages, what should I do? Like, don't do anything. The more you sort of practice your language and the more you speak it, the more you're immersed in it, then the easier it'll get for you not to mix up. But it's never something to worry about. It's not something that you will always do. You know, if you keep working on your language, it's not something that's uncontrollable in healthy brains anyway. So yeah, I just don't worry about it. It's fine. I think the last question from Twitter was from Nicolas Guillermo, and he asked me, at which point of the language learning process do you advise to start with a new one? Is it necessary to be completely fluent, or with a comfortable level, or is a comfortable level enough? My answer is very simple. Just change languages whenever you want. Like, there's literally no rule, and everyone that tells you, you know, wait to be fluent before you move on to another language, I think it's just a pile of crap, to be honest. I don't think there's any sort of valid reason for you not to change languages, and there's no valid reason for you to keep at a language. Just whenever you think is right is fine. In fact, I would say if your goal in life is to learn 25 languages at A1 level, or just learn how to introduce yourself in 50 languages, then that's fine. No one should really tell you when it's right. Personally, what I do is I do tend to wait to be sort of fluent, but it's never been like I'm fluent, therefore I can do another language. It's just, I've always just followed my guts. There's some languages like Italian, I'm not really fluent in Italian anymore, but that hasn't kept me from starting Japanese a couple of years ago. But basically, I don't think there's any rule, anything you need to follow really. Just kind of follow your guts and just do whatever you want, you know. Now from YouTube, so a yellow paper crown, hello. What language would you love to learn eventually? I would love to learn Lingala, which is an African language from Congo, because a friend speaks it and she sometimes tells me about like how to say a couple of things, and I just love the sound of it. And it'd be interesting to learn a language from another continent, because so far I've done European languages and then one Asian language, and I'd like to move on to an African language. That would be interesting. And I would just find it interesting to speak a language that a friend of mine speaks. Just, I don't know, I just find it fun. His second question is, how's life in England with the new EU settlement thing? Honestly, for me, no real changes. I just feel like the coronavirus has just distracted us from paying attention to whatever was happening with Brexit. So far, nothing. We'll see in the next few months, I guess. His third question is, if you could live anywhere else in the world, where would it be? Japan, 100%. And in fact, I think it might happen very soon, but obviously you guys will know about it in due time. Next question from Linda Ma. Hi Kevin, I would want to know how you became a French teacher. Do you have a degree in teaching, or what references do you need to have to become a teacher in the UK? I just did a PGCE, that's how I became a teacher, essentially. There's no long answer. For references, I think because I was already studying at the university where I did my PGCE, I just took references, I just got references from my tutors, and that was enough. Secondly, I would like to know why you decided to become a teacher. This one is a difficult question. I don't know if there's a specific reason. I think as soon as I started liking languages at school, that's when I wanted to become a teacher. I think some of my teachers inspired me. They were like so good and I had so much fun in their lessons, and being able to communicate in so many different languages was really it for me, I think. So just that, I think, made me want to teach, but also because teaching is to other people, the idea that I can help someone start from scratch and get to a point, however high that point is very exciting. You know, I have students that they come to my class and they know nothing or very little about French or Portuguese, and at the end of the year they can talk about, you know, simple things like their weekend, what they're going to do next week, what they did last weekend, and things like that, which is really cool. Like, it's really exciting. Then she says, as I am learning European Portuguese, Portuguese flag, I really like that you know European Portuguese. Maybe you could someday make a video entirely in Portuguese where you speak about language learning processes. I mean, you don't need to talk about a new topic. Maybe redo a video you already did in English, for example, about bilingualism. Thanks, beijinhos da Alemanha. Yeah, well, I definitely want to do videos in Portuguese. I did, I believe, 1 or 2? I think I only did 1, but I definitely want to do more videos in Portuguese, and I've got things that I want to say. And I kind of had this idea of creating a channel in Portuguese, but for lack of time, it's sort of in the background for now. It's not something I'm going to focus on, but I definitely want to do it. We'll see what happens in September if I've got more time to do more YouTube, but I definitely want to include more European Portuguese content because I mean, Portuguese is part of my life, so it's definitely something I want to share with you guys on my channel, and I can't promise when I will do it, but I will do it eventually. Now, Diana Polyglot, so why did you learn languages? Do you have specific reasons or motivations for each language you know? Why I learned is not really by choice, because it was at school. Well, first when I was a kid, because I learned 2 languages, but I don't know, I guess you could say it's acquire, not really learning, if you sort of have 2 different ways of defining the words. But if we talk about more formally learning, actively learning, then it was in school, where in France we have to learn 2 languages at least. And I just enjoyed learning languages. I mean, English was very difficult for me. I really was so bad at English. Better at Spanish, much better, but English wasn't that easy for me. And then I ended up doing Italian, and it's just kind of happened to me, I guess. I'm happy that I did take all these languages at school, but it just kind of happened. And as for my reasons or motivations for each language that I know, it kind of depends, because obviously French and Portuguese, my motivation was to like talk to my parents and my family and just, you know, like be a baby that is able to communicate. So that's kind of what everyone goes through, I guess, as a child. But then my motivations for English, Spanish and Italian was first of all to have a good grade, to be honest, because it was something I was taking in class. But then English moved to something a bit more like I wanted to be able to watch movies without subtitles. I mean, it's not really it, but I wanted to be able to, you know, just get better in English and be able to follow a movie without subtitles, because I thought that was super cool. Like, can you imagine, there's a language you don't speak since you're a kid, and then you are able to understand it as if it was your native language, kind of. Obviously, you're not a native speaker, but it's just so fascinating. And then for Japanese, my motivation, I guess, was to learn something really different, to learn a new code, which is very, very different from any other code that I had learned before. And yeah, it's just sort of the curiosity, I guess. Sorry, I feel like I went all over the place with that question, but here we go, that's my answer. Next question from David Guy. Have you learned a language completely on your own without taking any classes? Strictly speaking, no. But for Japanese, basically I did take a class, like a course, but it wasn't a time when I was really dedicated to learning Japanese, and I kind of talked about it on my channel a few years ago. I mean, I think it was 2 years ago. But basically I wasn't really doing the work, studying, etc. So I didn't really make the most of the course. I did learn some stuff, but you know, it could have been much, much more efficient if I had sort of put my mind into it, if I may say. So I kind of consider that I didn't really take formal classes in Japanese, but obviously I did. So I kind of did and didn't, I guess. But yeah, strictly speaking, I did take classes in Japanese. So far, I haven't tried learning a language from scratch without any sort of formal classes. His next question is, are you teaching online classes now? If so, how does that change the way you teach? So I'm not doing it now because I'm on holiday, but I did for the last 3-4 months while we were in quarantine in England. And it was kind of weird. I mean, I definitely prefer to be in the classroom because I like to interact with the students freely, to be able to communicate as a group, like in a more sort of natural way, because what's more natural than real life interactions, right? So online teaching was kind of difficult at first, not overly difficult, but it definitely took me some getting used to because I mean, I hadn't used Zoom really before, or at least I had never hosted a meeting on Zoom, so it was kind of different, but I think the students were really sort of appreciative of the effort I was putting into trying to keep a normal rhythm and keeping up with the classes, so that was definitely fun. And because I have adult students, they are usually quite motivated and very, very keen, which is really lovely. So it did go well in the end, and I kind of enjoy them, but I do like in-person teaching. So yeah, I don't know, it's kind of a different experience, and that's how I take it. It can be useful in the era of the internet to be able to, or getting used to teaching online, because that's kind of very common now, I guess. And the last question, and I'm getting pins and needles in my legs, so I'm glad it's the last one. So it's in French, so quelle est ta méthode pour apprendre une nouvelle langue? So what's my method to learn a new language? I'm gonna answer in English just so I don't have to put subtitles later on. I don't think I've got a method in particular to learn languages, but a few things that I've tried, and I think I talked about it in a video. Again, I will link them, I just can't remember when I do these videos, but I was talking about how, for example, in English, I had a lot of immersion in English, like watching lots of films, TV shows, etc. And it wasn't like a conscious method. I just wanted to do it, so I did it. So it wasn't anything like, I'm going to watch lots of content to be fluent. I was just like, I mean, I think I knew I was going to get better at English if I did that, but my real motivation was to just enjoy the TV shows in the original version. I'm thinking in French, version originale, in the original format, I guess. But for most of my languages, except from obviously French and Portuguese, I've learned all of them in a classroom, except for Japanese, because I learned Japanese way after school. But yeah, I've learned it the traditional way. And I know a lot of people criticize language classes, but they do work. They might not work for everyone, that's fair enough, but they do work for some people. In fact, I became quite fluent in Spanish thanks to my classes. I didn't really have so many opportunities to go to Spain. I mean, I did when I was a kid, but definitely most of what I've learned was from lessons. And it's true that sometimes it was maybe not the best way to learn, like, we had vocabulary lists, sorry, but the way the teachers did them was not random. I mean, there's always this stereotype that teachers just give lists, but that's not true. Like, teachers, normally, they will talk about a theme in class, and then they will give you vocab related to the theme, and you go through the vocab, and usually, I mean, hopefully, obviously, I mean, I don't know if there's going to be exceptions, but normally the vocab is related to what you did in the lesson, so it's not like out of context, like people make it out to be. So I don't know, I don't really understand the bad press in a way that language classes get, because they can be really effective, and they've been very effective for me. Yeah, so I think I answered that question. And oh no, one more thing. So for Japanese, which is the language I'm learning mostly on my own, as in I don't have, ongoing language classes, I usually like to have a textbook which I work my way through, and then I use Anki, and that's basically it. But I did outline everything I do in Japanese on my Japanese progress update video series. I forgot what it's called now, oh my god. My Japanese progress update series, where I really outline everything I use for Japanese, and you will have all the information there if you want. So that's it for this video. My legs are about to die, so I'm gonna stop there. Thank you very much for your questions, and I hope you found my answers useful, and I will see you later. Bye!